Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Tech.Strong.Women, where we feature amazing women doing amazing things in tech. I'm Jodi Ashley, executive producer here at Tech.Strong. I'm here with my co-host, Tracy Ragan, creator and CEO of Deploy Hub and very active Linux Foundation participant. Before I introduce today's guest, I'm going to give you a quick update about what's happening here at Tech.Strong. We've got a couple new sites launched out there you should go check out. And we have some virtual events coming up at the end of the year. So go to techstrongevents.com to register. And also, I heard yesterday that RSAC 2025 has just opened its call for papers. So ladies, jump in there, get your papers in. We want to see you at RSA. Tech.Strong is there doing live stream interviews all week long. So we'd love to see you there at RSA. And be sure to tune in every day to Tech.Strong.TV for great shows and interviews. Hey, Tracy, what's on your mind?
Well, it sounds like RSA should be on my mind.
I know. I just heard that. And I'm like,
I will submit. I would hope that we can get more women at these security type conferences, because I feel like after the Palo Alto Network's lampshade debacle, we really need to have more women in the room and a stronger voice. But that's not what's annoying me just today. That's annoying me constantly since I saw that image.
That was my bad.
That's okay. Today there was an article in, it's probably not a magazine that most people would be watching. It's called Air and Space Force magazine. And they often have a lot of articles most of it's about hardware and, new military equipment. But one came up today I found really interesting, and it was titled Solving DoD Software Dilemma with Continuous Authorizations to Operate, what they like to call CAOs. So I read deeper into it. Of course I would. And I found it really fascinating because they start talking about the need for improving software deployments and getting deployments out the door quicker and doing that in containerized environments. So the military has always has pushed high performance computing systems for quite a long time. Most of it being built around VM images, because those are the most isolated. So containers are starting to show up, and Kubernetes is starting to show up in the military. But now they're starting to understand that continuously deploying out to these sites, or what they're calling continuous authorization to operate, is becoming more and more prevalent. And when I dug deeper, some of the issues, not just the fear of doing a deployment, and I relate to the fear of doing deployment because I managed deployments for quite a long time. And I found that even the CrowdStrike, I really had sympathy for CrowdStrike. I felt bad for probably the team that deployed it, because it was such a failure. They can be scary. Deployments can be scary to do, and sometimes that keeps us from doing them. But trying to establish a continuous way to do this with testing and security, and they talked about security, and they talked about the need for continuously monitoring vulnerabilities at the edge, because imagine all of the edge points that the military has that they have to actually fix when a problem comes up. It is a massive problem for them. And this article came out just today. It references some of the DoD's documents on what they call this continuous authorization to operate, how they want to implement this process. And they also talk about their DevSecOps strategy, which requires a plan to continuously monitor vulnerabilities at the edge. And when I think about doing this, I think about all the tooling out there that requires agents. If you listen to me on the gang, I complain about agents all the time. And I'm just that the problem that they have to address is pretty massive when it comes to thinking about having an agent on every single military endpoint that's out there, and in all the arenas that they play in. That theater is huge, and they have thousands of endpoints. So this is a massive question that the DoD must solve. And, check it out. Look at it's today's article in airandspaceforces.com. And there's links to what they're talking about and how they want to solve it. So if it's an area that you're interested in and it fascinates you like it did me, I recommend taking a read.
Everything fascinates you.
In this space, it does. The idea of solving that, it seems so huge.
I know.
And Priyanka, tell us about your, I'm sure Jodi's going to ask this question, but I really want you to speak to that in terms of Kubernetes and what you're seeing in the industry in general.
First off, we need her to introduce herself. We've got Priyanka Sharma with us today. Priyanka, introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background, and then Tracy will remind you about the question.
Sure thing. This is so fun already. I love it. Hello, everybody. I'm Priyanka Sharma. I'm the Executive Director of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. We are where containers really grew up and became mainstream because Kubernetes was a container orchestration platform, as you all may know. And today we have 190 plus projects. In addition to Kubernetes, we have 750 plus member companies. These are folks who support the foundation and its efforts to make the cloud native ecosystem ubiquitous. So, and I think we're doing a decent job there. Last report, we had 7.1 billion developers around the world. And we host some of the, in my opinion, most fun and largest open source conferences in the world called KubeCon CloudNativeCon.
We do love a good KubeCon.
Yes. Coming up, Salt Lake City.
We're working on the plans now.
When is KubeCon this year and where is it?
Yeah, it's for North America. The one coming up is in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's in November 15th to 19th. Let me double check the dates because
it's the 12th through the 15th because I'm setting it up because Tech.Strong has been invited and we will be there live streaming Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So for the event. So yeah, we're geared up and ready to go for that one. We're excited.
Awesome. And we love to have you.
Let's go back to that article and this idea of, when we first started running, a Kubernetes cluster, did we ever think it was going to be put on our phone? Right.
Right. A lot has happened. For sure.
And the number of endpoints and the problem that the DoD faces, it's true. Doing deployments are scary.
Right.
There's a lot of risk associated to it. And that when you push the button, you're hoping for the best. I hate to put it that way, but sometimes you pray. You might have a little prayer before you push the button to say go. But a human shouldn't be really pushing the button anymore, right? It should be pushed through a pull request and the automation continues forward. But with the complexity of these decoupled architectures, talk to us about what you hear through the open source community. And of course, we have this weird problem right now where everything is about AI and we've forgotten almost completely about security. And we have probably a 5 to 10 year learning curve on really implementing true AI tools. So does security get pushed to the back? Where are we? Where's our head? And what's the Linux Foundation and CNCF talking about in these areas?
For sure. So first off, you're absolutely right. Deployment's really scary. That one we're all in agreement on across foundations, across other organizations. I think beyond that, the DoD is not alone, is what I would say. Of course, they have a scale that most of us don't understand. They have a level of complexity with the things that are confidential, mission critical, life or death, that is unusual. However, this problem of having multiple stakeholders, of having multiple edge points, it's only growing. Especially now we're talking soon 6G, right? Like 5G is here, 6G is coming. So all of that accelerates the focus on the edge world. And speaking of AI, which, is everyone's favorite topic right now, I think that also plays into making edge that much more important because so much of the features that we're expecting to land will be on edge devices. So I think things are coming together in a way in that the trends are converging to be of concern to, like, most people will have similar concerns. Like before it was like, oh, this organization cares mostly about edge. This organization concerns itself mostly with security. Now, I think things are a bit more, it's a stew melting pot going on right now. But to your point, I think the realization of the AI value will come over the next few decades as we see what are the tools, features, products that are built that really change lives. So what we are seeing right now is organizations, big and small, just gearing themselves up to take the most advantage of it. I'm really happy to say that cloud native, I think I said in my introduction, right, that where containers became a bigger and bigger enterprise force. And now that same group of individuals have morphed into the platform teams, so to speak, right, that manage the tooling and infrastructure for organizations and their developers. And these are the same people being tasked to create the platform for running AI workloads. And the reason for it is that AI is not special. It is part of your entire software system. Like the code base contains some AI workloads and many not. And it all has to work together. So the trend I'm very much seeing is that the platform teams are the unifying layer who have to think about the ultimate delivery and deployment. And that's actually good news because those people will always care about reliability. They'll always care about security, observability. All the things we've grown to learn are critical to successful software systems.
Yeah, I feel like AI is actually more of a problem than it is solving any problems. It's creating problems for us because we now have new types of tooling that we have to start worrying about. We haven't even figured out how to stop a data breach on a basic database, much less how to start managing these LLMs with, I don't know, 13 billion parameters that could easily be tweaked and they're not versioned, right?
Right.
So how do we start seeing into that? So and when it comes to dev, and we should add sec to this now, DevSecOps, we don't have the flexibility that we need in these brittle workflows to be able to progress at the rate that AI is progressing.
Yes.
Right. So
it's very much in the infancy, I think, the support around it.
Yes. But just supporting our existing workflows. Just take our regular, first we had a monolith, right? And then Kubernetes, put a bomb in it and broke it all apart, which was good because now we have small containers and we can release smaller pieces so that deployment's not quite so scary. But at the same time, that one container could have a massive blast radius.
Right.
And at the same time, every single container is running the same, is pulling in the same package. So Log4j is not just running in 100 of our applications, our monolith applications, it's running in thousands of containers.
Right.
Absolutely. So it is that type, and that's just thinking about the architecture of the application structure, right. A logical application. It's not talking about now push all that out to these endpoints that we have to manage.
Yeah.
So it gets big. It's a really
order of magnitude problem.
It's huge. It's a hard problem to fix. I was recently at a conference and they were talking about deep tech and really difficult problems to fix. Interesting enough, they didn't consider this problem a deep tech problem.
It's only shallow tech.
I should have said that.
Where do we qualify to be?
It's the kiddie pool end of the deal, not the diving part end of the pool.
Like, well, what's deep tech then? Is it like robots? And I'm like, okay, all right. Because I feel like this problem fits into a deep tech problem because it requires contribution from many different organizations. And that's why the CNCF is important and the Continuous Delivery Foundation and the OpenSSF. It's going to require all of us at the table to really sort this out. And the ability for new tooling to be born without having to have the word AI in front of it.
Yeah. And to your point of a lot of people have to come together, a lot of different disciplines have to come together. The AI story is so much a data story, right? And suddenly it's actually a parallel to the DevOps movement where the developers and operators needed to understand each other. Now, and then it became developers, security professionals, operators with DevSecOps. And now we really need to have build empathy with our friends in the data science world, the people who live in Jupyter notebooks. Same goes then towards the AI engineers who really are up the stack, right? They're involved with the PyTorches of the world. That's where they live. And how do you make sense of it all to like the infrastructure folks, the platform folks that we have in cloud native, and bridge the gap with the data teams, with the AI engineer teams? Because if we don't do that, we'll have the same problems that we did in the past when dev and ops were separate, but with a much larger magnitude, because there's that much more complexity. It's just that much harder, which is fine because that's kind of how it goes, right? Things get more complex over time. But it also makes it that much more important for us to come together at the table. And I think we're seeing that slowly start to happen. The benefit of coming after the cloud native revolution, in my opinion, is that we have a little bit of a vocabulary, a little bit of a blueprint of how we did this before for DevOps, and we need to replicate it and amplify it for this new era and eras henceforth.
Right. But our problem's going to be all those statically coded workflows.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be so many problems.
Yes.
but that's why we're in business, right? It's like,
Yeah.
things
Job security.
right. That's what I'm telling you. We have
That's so important. It's so important to bring people in at the table.
Yes.
Which I think the CNCF has done a great job. I would hope that in the future, this is just, for all the Linux Foundation projects that have things in common. I would like to see more collaboration between the CD Foundation, the OpenSSF, and the CNCF, because it's going to require all of them. But tell us about it, for our audience, which obviously probably mostly women watch this, even though we get pretty technical, and men are certainly, we're glad that they watch too. But tell us how more women can get involved in some of the CNCF projects, because it's been diversity in open source is an issue. It's a problem. And I, running an open source project myself, I can see how women show up, and we really, really have to support them and make sure that they know they're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Is the CNCF working on that? And can you tell us a little bit about why somebody should get involved in one of the projects and the best way to do that?
Absolutely. I think diversity, equity, inclusion is baked into the fabric of cloud native, and CNCF as who we are. I am a beneficiary of that factor because I was involved in cloud native since the first year. As part of this observability project called Open Tracing, and we became third project to join in CNCF. And this was the first community, I have to say, where I felt welcomed from minute zero. I remember actually walking into a Kubernetes meetup in Seattle before the second KubeCon, and I was so nervous because I was by no means an infrastructure expert. I just started learning about telemetry and observability and loving it, but not an expert, not even close. And I remember walking in super nervous because clearly everybody else had had a lot of miles under their feet. And just as I was standing there, this group of people were like, "Oh, I didn't come and join in." And I walked over, and they were interested. They wanted to talk to me and hear about why I was there, what I was working on, and offer any support that they could. And that was the beginning for me, what ended up being a very fruitful association. First as a contributor, then I actually got elected to the CNCF governing board, and then eventually leading the foundation. I was given opportunities every step of the way. I was very proactive about that. I was very much like, "Hi, me." But the foundation's been set up in a way that we want to see diversity, equity, inclusion, whether it's on the keynote stage, whether it's on the ladders that we're building for contributors, whether it is in the scholarships that we give out to people to attend our KubeCons. And so we try our best, but I say this in a good way. Nothing is good enough. So we have to keep at it. And I think what we have done a good job of is representation. We have some very solid female leaders who are there and very much part of the community. I think where it's much harder is where in the contributor ladder for projects. That is where, I think starting in open source is hard for anyone. It's just generally speaking, but the inequities compound is what happens. And so you see fewer and fewer participation. But we are working towards a lot of initiatives around like mentorship with like Google Summer of Code, with LFX, our own LF initiative, to pull in more diversity. I think it's you have to keep at it, and you have to combine macro and micro, in my opinion. So macro is programmatic, right? How are we structuring things so that you bake in diversity? And micro is every interaction you have with somebody who should be pulled in, could be pulled in, make that extra effort. I tried. I know everyone on my staff tries to do it. And I know people in the community teach us how to do it. So we're by no means perfect, but I think we put our best foot forward.
And I appreciate that there's a focus on it, because what I have observed in open source over the years, from the Eclipse Foundation when I was first involved in that, up until, working with the CDF and OpenSSF, is that there are more women in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then they feel like they get flushed out by the onslaught of men that come in. And once that happens, their voice is somewhat diminished.
Yeah.
Is the best way to describe it. And it's hard to keep the balance when you don't have in the industry in general. We don't have that many women in it. I don't know what the percentage is. Let's say it's 20% women and 80% men. So when you have an open source project that first gets started, you may have 50-50 kind of ratio between men and women. This is at least what I'm seeing with Ortelius. Once it gets bigger, there's more men coming in, and the women seem to step back. And I'm constantly trying to work and encourage them to step forward and take on things that maybe is out of their comfort zone, because I see men willing to do that more often.
Right. That makes sense. I think even on a macro long-term level, hasn't this been the story of computer science? It was so much of a women-led thing in the beginning. And all those code breakers in the world wars, all of that, they were mostly female. And over time, things changed. And I think that's what you're seeing reflected in the projects that you work on, it happening in a much shorter time frame. I think what I've seen is definitely that there are certain disciplines that just have traditionally had more men in the last, let's say, decade or 2 decades. And those, like the projects that come are, they contain those people. Some of them, though, really make an effort and are able to pull in, strong technical women to contribute, and then eventually grow the ranks to being maintainers. And then if that desire is not that strong, because it's hard work, for others, it's less likely to happen. So that's kind of the unfortunate dichotomy that I observe. At the same time, I think it's important to keep building the pipeline. So I'm actually going to be doing a keynote at the Day Zero, I think it's called, for Grace Hopper this year, to talk about women joining into open source and how important it is. Simply from a purely personal, individual perspective, it's good for your career. It was good for my career. It's good for every person I know that's involved in their career. So just do it and see what opportunities will open up for you. I think the more pipeline we build, the more people will drop off. That's just how it's going to go. But you have more people who might potentially stay till the very end. So I'm a big believer in uplifting existing talent and also build the pipeline, educate where you can, because for whatever reason, and this is a big frustration of mine, open source runs the world. It powers the internet. And yet it's a little bit of an obscurity amongst the general public. And I'm like, how is this happening? It's as if people didn't know about roads and bridges. It feels like that, right? And I just want everyone to know so that they can make the choice whether it's interesting for them or not to get involved.
That is a really great analogy. It's true. Most people don't understand what open source is, and it is like them not understanding roads and bridges. And how federal government gets involved. And I don't know, but it does happen, right? People don't understand about it. Most people have no idea about open source packages that you consume. Sure. They're completely, it's so obfuscated. You can't see it. You can't touch it and smell it and pick it up. It's hard to really conceptualize it.
And there's also, in my opinion, now this is a bit of a tangent, but I think there's a lack of storytelling around open source in a way that other previously obscure areas have actually successfully done. So think about like finance and, Wall Street. Everything they do is intangible as well, but there's so much fiction around it. There are movies, there's storytelling, that everybody gets it. Okay, finance is a vertical. This is what people do, generally speaking, over there. Open source has had no stories. Maybe we just need to write the next great American novel about open source, and that'll do it.
I think you guys are right. I mean, even I'm a newbie to all of this, obviously, and just as a goofy example, I got a new Kindle over the weekend, and all of my books are Nook books, all my library, and Barnes & Noble got rid of their whole web interface so that you couldn't move stuff around anymore. And my husband, who's the CTO of our company and works with you guys day in and day out, pulled up an open source thing that someone had written that allows you to convert all of your books from Nook to Kindle. And he spent like all day Saturday. There was a glitch. He emailed them. They told him what to do. And now all of my like 380 books are now on my Kindle. And I'm like, open source does that? And he's like, yeah. But, I never would have thought to do that. But that's like everyday people, super helpful thing. How many people are struggling with that? So I just think it's crazy. I just had no idea. And I just think of it as what you guys are talking about, not like the world in general.
That's such a sweet, that is truly a man who loves you.
I know, true love, right there.
Half of those books are his too. So all the audit stuff that he listens to. Yeah, he does. I think it was fun. I think he enjoyed the process. It was like trying to figure it out. And he just sat there and got it all done. And I was like, yeah, he's the best.
He's the best.
You guys know him. He's the best.
He is. So Priyanka, why don't you give us a little bit of your background? How did you get into technology? There seems to be a common thread with women getting into technology. What is your story?
So for me, I started my career at Google many, many years ago in a business role. And I was doing partnerships for AdSense. But by chance, I started working with internal engineering teams to build like dashboards for the sales team to utilize the information to get better intelligence, etc. And I found myself so enamored. I had so much fun. Google has that concept of 20% project. So this was my 20% project. And I found myself just craving this work. And so I did more and more with those folks. And I thought I got along with them better too. So I was like, oh, this is a good sign. I'm happier here. And eventually I actually ended up getting an offer to join that organization. But then I decided to go down the startup route because that was a parallel passion of mine. I was at startups that, I did different roles, learned a lot about building a company, eventually did my own company. And that crashed and burned. But that's where I got into open source because we tried many ideas. And the one that worked was a time tracking application for developers. And the way we designed it, it had plugins that were open source that anybody could build. So if you want to build a plugin for data collection from anything, whether it's your different text editors or what have you, you can build your own plugin if it's something obscure that we won't have already. And that's when I saw this magic of people just building. Because it kind of like the story you told about your husband helping you, encode, decode your books, is people have a use case. They'll go ahead, try what's available, and then contribute what they need to get the job done. And that I saw the amplification effect, the economies of scale so to say, that happen when you have that kind of a community. Add to that it was just a fun group of people. So I was like, okay, I'm liking this situation. And then, while the startup didn't go further, I was clear after that experience that I want to be in open source. I started at that time, there were not that many go-to-market folks who were working in dev tools. And I started working with this incubator called HeavyBit, who focused specifically on dev tools. And I was helping out their companies with how to work with developers, how to go to market, etc. And I ended up joining one of their portfolio companies called Lightstep. And that was a huge change for me, because while they had an open source project they were building, is all exactly what I was looking for. It was also orders of magnitude more complex, because this was suddenly in the infrastructure realm. This is where they were building an observability product for distributed systems. So I had to learn a lot, and quickly, ideally. So that was a daunting but awesome experience. I think for about 3 months, I was in meetings where I would hear words being used, English being used, but the sentences were not making sense. And then slowly, though, I guess osmosis, doing my own practice, trying to, try out demos and stuff that were available on GitHub, and just talking to people. I started building a mental map of how these systems work and what we are trying to build here. And that was the Open Tracing project, which I absolutely fell in love with. I made t-shirts that said tracing is fun. I still have a few. And I got involved. That's when I got involved with CNCF. A lot of work I did was with end users, or folks who utilize this technology, but are not vendors in the space. So think of your traditional Fortune 5000, right? And that was an awesome experience, because we were learning together, these folks and I. And then as I grew in this community, as this community and ecosystem grew, we all became had more expertise. And today, I'll tell you, like, having gone from contributor to board member to executive director, now when I'm talking to end users, they are so sophisticated. They don't need a vendor to really handhold them as much as to enable them. And they're able to call the shots more and enable this ecosystem to be a better ecosystem for everyone. So that's been my journey, and I've loved it.
That is quite the journey you've been on. You've done so many things, working for startups, working for, a VC,
big tech startup, VC, foundation.
You do it all. Yeah. The foundation. Which one's been the most fun?
Oh boy. I would say, I think startups are really fun for me personally. And actually CNCF feels like a startup, which is good and bad, right? Because you work a lot when it's a startup, but the energy, the pace, and the desire to change things, that's really intoxicating. And actually that's something what I credit this AI wave with, because before everybody started talking about generative AI, cloud native containers, Kubernetes were becoming very much default for a lot of the workloads. And we were seen as a mature foundation. Now, with the rise of Gen AI, we have new work to do, right? Like the vendors are talking to me like, I want to be the storage solution for AI workloads on Kubernetes. And it's like, blank space, let's go work on it. And then many other such things. So it's reinfused this energy in this, like, solve all these crazy problems. And I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, anytime we have new tools that we can put to work means we can build better software, which means we have to go back and say, where can it be applied? Right. And that's the question I think that we're facing with AI is, where can this be applied? I was at the conference I was at last week. I mentioned to somebody who was a writer, I think, for Forbes, and they were really excited about AI and talking about it. And I said, the problem with AI is it's not a product. AI is not a product
in that way. Yeah.
Any more than a database is a product.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
What you mean?
It's not a product. It might give us new features.
Correct.
So AI are features of a product, but it itself is not a product. She disagreed with me completely. But, as a developer, I see AI as being a set of tools, but those tools do have a place and have to be managed in production environments.
That's the key point. Yeah. And if
Yes.
you don't do that, you're not going to be able to see the reality of this promise.
Right.
And I'll be wasted.
Which brings me back to why the DevOps and the DevSecOps is still an important discussion.
Absolutely.
It is extremely important. And I feel like, DevOps got kind of long on the tooth, but boy, we have a lot to do still. When you think about that article that the military just wrote,
Yes.
they're just now thinking about doing continuous deployments, which is really what that means. We have a long way to go. We have not solved that problem yet. And we're adding quite a bit to the stack to manage all those AI agents.
There and when there's froth in the industry, it doesn't help. And I think we're a little bit in that space. The one with this whole agentic workloads, etc. The one thing that's just going to be a reality, and I'm heard of people for whom it is a reality, is that the bills are what keep people in check. Right. So, just as it happened in the early days of cloud computing, when suddenly developers had access to infra directly where bills went, and nobody realized they were doing that. It was not intentional. And then people had to get more disciplined around it. I'm hearing similar stories around AI workloads where, I just added a 0 to our bill. Whoops. And I think that goes back to why the platform engineering teams, who initially may have been told that they didn't know what they were doing when it came to AI workloads, are now being called like, help me right now, because we need to design the platform engineering to work in a way that the engineers have ability to experiment, but we don't, bring the house down with the costs. So I think that kind of provides a bit of a checks and balance, so to speak. But I really hope that the productionization of these workloads alongside the rest of the application is something that we can work in lockstep as an industry on, because without it, I just don't see the larger success coming that we are looking for with AGI and this and that.
Yeah, if we can't get it out to production in a safe and secure way, then
Right.
people aren't going to trust it, and it's going to have problems.
Right.
And that's the case with all software. But like I said, we're expanding our stack, and we're expanding the dependencies. We're expanding the attack surface, and the DevSecOps pipeline has to still be brought forward and considered in solving.
It needs to evolve and expand.
It needs to evolve.
And I think without the right amount of focus and weight going there, organizations will not be successful. If they don't prioritize the structure of their platform, it's not going to be successful.
I agree completely, 100%. We have to shift, right? We have to pivot. We're not building monolithic applications anymore, and everything we've done in DevOps is based on monolith. And we never pivoted when we started going to containers. We just created that many more workflows.
True.
Right? Everything is independently deployed. So now we have millions and millions of workflows that we can't even add an SBOM to.
And then you add agentic workloads. It's like, wait, what? Now I added an order of magnitude more. So we got to solve that. Absolutely.
Well, we won't today. So
I know we're going to come out.
We thought we were going to solve all the world's problems.
That was the plan.
Priyanka, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do when you're not thinking about software and projects?
Gosh, well, these days it's all taken up by my 15-month-old, who is a big ball of energy. I thought it was hard just after he was born the first year. No, it was a breeze. The fifth, I think, well, I've had the terrible twos come early. I don't know, but my kid's really independent, really active, and trying to jump off couches all the time. So trying to protect him from himself. That's where a lot of time goes, but it's very rewarding. It's a whole, it's a whole different order of magnitude of complexity when you have a life that has. Before I was all about my work life, and now I have this big other priority. So I'm learning how to be a working mom is where I'm at these days.
I'm glad you came back. So many women don't come back after starting a family, because that can be you're balancing two big things.
Yeah.
Being an executive director of the CNCF and being a new mom, those are two heavy things.
Yeah. And the mom stuff goes like 0 to 100 real fast is like the career you've built up over time, right? And you've slowly grown into it. This mom thing is like one day you weren't a mom and the next day you are. And it's a full big responsibility. So adjusting is hard. And, I think it's challenging everywhere, but like particularly in the United States, it's very challenging because of the way the care structures are set up. I don't blame anyone who decides that they need to do things a little differently right after they have children. However, it's a shame for the ecosystem to lose great talent. And I really hope that more employers, structurally, we do more for society as parents and not just employers, but as governments and everything, because why would you lose half your workforce? That just doesn't make sense to me.
No, it absolutely doesn't. So we have to vote, people. Vote. vote here, because those things are on the table to be improved upon. So we got to vote. Now, I know what you're saying, though. It's with kids, work, you can control some of it, but with little ones, they are evolving at a rate of speed where you don't want to miss stuff. But it's like always changing. Like my kids are all grown up and out of the house now. But yeah, that time when they're little is so important.
Yeah.
It goes by fast.
And then like, hopefully, they have their own, this is what I'm hoping, that he'll have his own school time, etc. And that changes the rhythm a little bit. But before school is a real thing, I think the care situation it's tricky. Sometimes you're like, man, it would just be easier if I just did this. The scheduling and the logistics. So it adds up. But I'm really grateful that I have so far been able to manage, walk that tightrope and manage both, because it's worth it. Like I love my work and I love my kid, and it's nice. It's nice to be able to do both.
And it's great that the CNCF recognizes that, and the Linux Foundation recognizes that and supports you in doing both. And I think for a lot of companies, that may not be there.
Yeah, we have 6 months maternity leave, and I could break it up, which was awesome. So I took bits and pieces depending on my personal preferences and my work schedule. So I think employers really need to be flexible. And I think LF has done just such an amazing job supporting all parents that are in the organization. And I encourage all other employers to do the same, because people, if they are supported, they will come back. They will want to do better, more for an organization that did something for them during a time that's so meaningful as a human being.
For years, Computer Associates, which is now Broadcom, they used to be one of the number one places to work.
Okay.
The number one. And you know why?
They probably had on-site daycare.
Bingo.
Yep.
Oh, very cool.
On-site daycare.
A lot of big companies did that.
Office.
Yeah.
Bring
your kid to work with you, and you could go down and have lunch with them.
Oh,
and then and if you were a nursing mom, you could go down and do that during the day. I worked for a couple of really big companies that had that, and it was a big deal. But I did the same thing. I finally just stopped working because it wasn't something, we could afford to do both things. It was just easier. And then I came back to the workforce, like 5-6 years later, once my kids were both school aged.
That's so good.
And with tech, that's just too hard, though, because things change so fast. I wasn't in the industry doing what you're doing, and I could come back for what I was doing back then and just kind of pick up where I left off. With tech, it's so hard. It's
6 months and you're like, wait, what happened?
Absolutely.
Right. Exactly. It's very hard. Right now, the pace has been fierce. Mm-hmm. To try to keep up on understanding what's happening in the AI market, understand what's happening in the cyber market, and then just in general, trying to take products to market without having to take on all these new things, all these new technologies and everything you have to learn. It has been really hard for everyone, much less someone who, took 6 months off and came back and had to try to get back into it. And I really believe that's probably the number one reason why we have so much attrition in the women in the workforce in technology.
Well, and COVID multiplied it by 20.
Yes.
It did.
So many moms had to do so much, and they just didn't come back.
It must have been. I'm so glad I kind of missed that time frame, because it sounds so hard. Every day school is telling you different rules. Every day things are changing. How do you handle that?
Well, and homeschooling your kids while you're trying to work from home too, because everybody's locked up.
Hard. Yeah.
Hard stuff.
Really difficult. But yeah, I agree with what both of you are saying. Family life is probably a big reason a lot of people stop out or don't ever come back, unfortunately.
And I don't blame them.
No,
It's not their fault. Like, how are you supposed to manage this? Yeah.
Family always should be, in my world, family is always first. If something's happening, your employer should be understanding enough to
Yeah.
And that's not just, that's on the other side of life too. That's on, caring for an elderly parent.
Yeah.
Right?
Actually, it's not just children. I agree with that.
Right.
And that side of life gets less kind of sympathy than, you have a 2-year-old at home as opposed to you have a 90-year-old at home, right?
Oh, I so agree with you. And it's so unfair because those are the people that raised you, right? And it's just, my husband is Swedish. So I see a lot of how the Nordic system works for these things. And they really have it better. I have to say. It's, I went to visit somebody's grandparents and they're in their early 90s. And there was somebody hanging out with them, just hanging out with them for a couple of hours. And they were like, oh yeah, this person is from this government agency. She comes to check in on us and hang out with us. That's wonderful. So, it's nice.
Well, Priyanka, I would like to actually hang out with you sometime in person.
Same.
and we're gonna have to call it, ladies, because as usual I let it go way too long. But I'm the boss, so I can if I want. This was an amazing conversation. I'm so excited. We got you on. We know we've been trying forever and schedules are crazy. So thank you so much for being here. Tracy, you want to add anything?
No, I just want to thank you and good luck with the 15-month-old. I have a feeling you think you're going through terrible twos. Wait till you get terrible threes.
It's not, I know, that's my fear.
Yeah, but once they get to the threes, they can go to preschool. So life gets better.
Yes, I just need to hang in. But this has been such
that to look forward to. Thanks for everybody. Thank you, Priyanka. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Tech.Strong.Women. Please stay tuned. There's a lot more to watch today, so keep watching Tech.Strong TV. And we'll see you next time on Tech.Strong.Women. Thanks, everyone.